Today, we're diving into Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow. Honestly, this book is like the owner's manual for your brain that you never got. So get ready, because what you're about to learn is probably going to change the way you think about, well, thinking itself.
We all like to think we're pretty rational, right? That we're in the driver's seat of our own minds. But what if I told you your mind has a mind of its own, that it plays tricks on you every single day, and you don't even notice? Let's actually put that to the test right now.
Okay, listen to this little puzzle and just go with your gut feeling. Here we go. Statement 1. All roses are flowers. Makes sense. Statement 2. Some flowers fade quickly. Also makes sense. And the conclusion, therefore, some roses fade quickly. So, is that argument logically valid? Does that conclusion have to be true? Most people get a really strong, immediate feeling about the answer. What's yours?
So, did you think it was valid? If you did, hey, you're in good company. Most people do. But here's the thing. The logic is actually flawed. Think about it. It's totally possible that the flowers that fade quickly are, tulips and daisies, and that none of the roses are in that specific group. Your mind just leaped to a conclusion that felt plausible, not one that was logically necessary. And this right here, this is our first big clue that something really fascinating is going on inside our heads.
So what in the world is happening here? Well, Kahneman's huge idea, the core of the whole book, is that our thinking is run by two very different systems. You can almost think of them as two characters inside your head, and they're always fighting for control.
So let's meet the cast. First, you've got System 1. This is the hero of our story. It's fast, automatic. It's that gut feeling you have, the part of you that jumped to a conclusion on that rose puzzle. And then there's System 2. Think of it as the thoughtful but kind of lazy sidekick. It's slow, deliberate, and it takes real effort to get it to do anything. System 2 could have spotted the flaw in that logic puzzle, but man, that would have taken work. And here's the kicker. System 1 is running the show almost all the time. System 2 only gets off the couch when it absolutely has to. Now don't get me wrong, System 1 can be an absolute superhero. It is a master of recognizing patterns. There's this incredible story about a fire commander who was inside a burning house and just suddenly heard himself yell, "Let's get out of here." Just seconds after they ran out, the floor they were standing on collapsed. He didn't consciously know why he said it, but his expert System 1 had picked up on tiny cues. The fire was too quiet, his ears felt too hot, and it sounded the alarm. That's the life-saving power of expert intuition. But, and this is a huge but, for all of its brilliance, System 1 has these predictable blind spots. It loves to use mental shortcuts, and those shortcuts lead to systematic errors. Psychologists call them cognitive biases. And these little glitches influence everything from what you buy to who you vote for. And maybe the most important idea in this whole field is something called prospect theory. This is the work that actually won Kahneman the Nobel Prize, and what it does is explain our deeply irrational relationship with risk. It basically boils down to this. We don't make decisions based on cold, hard logic. We make them based on our feelings about potential gains and potential losses.
This chart here, it maps out our irrationality in what's called the fourfold pattern. So when we have a high chance of an easy win, we get really risk-averse. We'd rather take the sure thing than gamble for a little more. But, and watch this, when we're facing a high chance of a loss, our behavior completely flips. Suddenly, we become risk-seeking. We're willing to roll the dice on a long shot just to avoid that guaranteed loss. The context, whether it's about gains or losses, totally changes the game.
So why do we do this? It's because of a really powerful bias called loss aversion. Psychologically, the pain of losing something feels about twice as strong as the pleasure of gaining that exact same thing. It's probably an evolutionary thing, Back in the day, avoiding a tiger was a lot more important for survival than finding an extra berry. Here's a super simple experiment that shows this perfectly. Researchers gave one group of people a coffee mug for free. Then they asked them how much they'd sell it for. They asked a second group how much they'd be willing to pay to buy that same mug. The results were wild. The sellers wanted more than $7 for it, but the buyers, they'd only pay about $3. Why the huge gap? Because for the sellers, giving up the mug they now owned felt like a loss, and that loss hurt, so they demanded more money. That's loss aversion in a nutshell. Okay, so if having two competing systems in your brain wasn't mind-bending enough, get ready for another twist. Kahneman says we also have two different selves inside us, and they're constantly battling over how to define our happiness. I want you to imagine you're listening to this magnificent 40-minute-long symphony. It's just pure bliss. But then in the very final second, there's a horrible, loud, scratching sound from the record. One person who experienced this said it ruined the whole experience. But think about that. Did it really? Did one bad second actually erase 40 minutes of genuine joy? Or did it just ruin the memory of the experience?
And this brings us to our two selves. First, there's the experiencing self. This self lives completely in the present moment. It's the part of you that actually sat there enjoying that beautiful music. But then you have the remembering self. This self is the storyteller. It's the one that keeps score, that writes the narrative of your life, and it's the one that makes all your future decisions. So guess which self decided the whole symphony was ruined? Yep, the remembering self.
And here's the crazy part. The remembering self doesn't play fair at all. It uses two really bizarre rules to edit your reality. The first is called the peak-end rule. Your memory basically just takes the most intense moment, the peak, and the very end, and it averages those two things out. That's it. And the second rule is duration neglect. The actual length of the experience, it pretty much gets totally ignored. This is why that awful scratch at the end had the power to completely overwrite 40 minutes of bliss.
So our intuition is full of glitches, and our memory is a ruthless editor. That might sound a little bleak, but it's really not. The whole point of understanding these systems isn't to feel helpless, it's to get smarter. We can actually learn how to make better decisions.
Look, the goal is not to get rid of our fast, intuitive System 1. We couldn't even if we tried, and frankly, it's often brilliant. The real skill is learning to recognize what Kahneman calls cognitive minefields, those situations where your gut feeling is very likely to lead you astray. That's the moment when you need to consciously slow down and wake up your lazy but powerful sidekick, System 2. And here are 3 incredibly powerful techniques to do just that. First, for repetitive decisions like hiring someone, use a checklist. It forces you to be systematic and to ignore your unreliable gut feelings. Second, seek the outside view. Instead of getting lost in the unique details of your own project, just ask, what happened when other people tried to do something similar? Look at the stats. And third, try a pre-mortem. Before you commit to a big plan, get your team together and imagine it's a year from now and the plan has failed spectacularly. Now, write the history of that failure. It is an unbelievable way to see risks you were way too optimistic to notice before.
Ultimately, the biggest lesson from thinking fast and slow is a call for a little intellectual humility. It's about recognizing that our feeling of confidence is often just an illusion, a story cooked up by our fast-thinking, storytelling mind. So I'll just leave you with this question. Now that you know a little more about how your mind fools you, what's one decision you'll approach just a little differently?